watching the Jennylyn Show, and I am Jennylyn Gleave, your host. And today, my guest is Stacie Tamaki, my very good friend and blogger. But today, she's just going to talk a little bit about her blog and more about her Glampette. Is that correct, Stacie?
That's correct.
And the Glampette is the beautiful little home that's behind us. And our apparel is also lending to our story. I am the glamorous part of this interview, and she's the camper. Because the Glampette,
Yeah.
the Glampette is a glamorous camping mobile. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
And have you tell us more about all of your wonderful adventures. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Sure.
Well, I think the first question people usually ask is, why did I want a trailer like this? And it was because I was on the internet one night just surfing, I don't even remember for what. And I came across a blog post by a blogger in Seattle, the Fancy Farm Girl, who had an old vintage canned ham trailer, which is much larger than this. And she had glamped it. And I'm like, what is glamp? And I looked it up and found out it's glamorous camping. And I thought, that'd be so neat, I want one. But my car can't tow something that heavy. And then time passed and one thing led to another, and I ended up starting to design a little tiny one that I hoped my car could tow. And I joined a forum on the internet called Teardrops and Tiny Travel Trailers, where all these people go and talk about building and restoring teardrop trailers, which are similar but a little bit bigger than mine.
Right.
And I thought, all these people are doing all this work themselves, I'll build my own trailer. So I took a MIG welding class and a metal shop class with the intention of building it, and then realized I don't want to build this trailer. It's going to be way too much work. And
I can't believe
take too long.
You actually went and took the classes to build it?
I did.
You thought it was like making a dress?
I just thought there are steps and procedures, and if I just learn how to do them, I would be able to do this. So I had put my design ideas onto this forum because people will give you really good feedback
Right.
of how to do things better.
Yeah.
And in the course of just getting feedback, I met Fred Markoff, who lives in central Michigan in Greenville. And he was the only person on that forum who popped in, and he left me a very long, detailed post giving me just basically free advice on how to do the build correctly.
Wow.
And so we became friends on the forum. And by the time I realized I don't want to build this trailer after all, I was able to ask him if I could hire him to build it for me. And he had designed and built 2 other styles of small teardrop trailers since 2005. And he'd never done an original design for a customer before, so he was a little reluctant at first. And he took a couple days to think about it. And then he called me back and said, okay, he's willing to give it a go. So he started building it for me last December.
Amazing. Seriously, because it's sometimes when you're dealing with something like this, because it's so kind of out of the box or out of what people normally do.
Right.
When you take the first steps, I know for me, I would get discouraged and then put it on the side. So I think the most admirable, it's having this desire and giving birth to it by taking all the steps
Right.
to getting it done. So tell us what happened. So you went and met him.
So after I talked to him on the phone and convinced him to let me hire him, he took about 5 months to build the trailer, and every week or every other week he would send me a batch of photos by email to show me the progress. So it was like I was there and could see, what was going on, and certain things he would send me a picture, like where to place the lights inside the cabin and
Right.
where to put the license plate holder. He'd tape things up and take a picture and email it to me, and then we'd talk on the phone, and I'd say, yes, that's great, or can we put it there instead? And so I did get to keep collaborating with him even from afar. But he finally sent me an email earlier this spring and said she's done. And so then I had to drive out to Michigan to pick up the trailer, which was most interesting because I'd never driven outside of Washington, Oregon, and California before. And now I'm taking my dog and heading out to Michigan for the first time across the country.
Well, I know lots of adjectives, but I can only say that is so gutsy. I mean, seriously, you didn't know the guy. who built it, except from the internet.
Right. And to that point, like safety-wise, I did research, you know, and I went back. The forums are nice because you can go back usually and read every post a person has ever written.
Right.
So before we got too involved even in the build process, I had gone back and kind of, you know, skimmed through. I think he'd been a member of the forum for 8 years.
Okay.
And I could just tell by the way other people interacted with him, he was well respected. And then having talked to him on the phone once a week for 5 months, you know, I felt like I had a really good feeling for what kind of person he was. So it was taking a chance, but I didn't think it was taking a risk to do that.
So obviously this is something you were passionate about because you saw it through to the end. Well,
yes.
At least until you got there.
Right.
So, you know, when you have a build-up in your mind and your heart about something, when you actually got there and saw it, how did you feel?
I was elated. It was really funny because he took me into the garage to show me the trailer. And I took one look at it, and my first reaction was, it's even smaller than I thought it would be.
I was going to say.
And he got worried, and then I said, I love it. And he actually let out this audible sigh of relief, because all this time he was worried, what if she doesn't like it? Because I'd never traveled in a camper before, or trailer. I'd never gone camping before.
That's amazing.
So a lot of people were concerned, well, what if you get it and you don't like it? But I'd read enough about other people traveling with a tiny trailer that I had a really good sense I would like it. And then it's turned out I've loved it even more than I thought I would. Because I love the travel on the interstates. I love just driving, you know, for 10 hours a day and seeing the country.
So you got there, and he had built it to specification, obviously. And then what did you do? Just put your stuff inside of it and started traveling? Tell us what happened after that.
I was there for a few days while he finished. I had my car wired. The thing is, the reason I hired him specifically is I wanted to tow the trailer with my 1994 Acura Integra, which only has a tow capacity of 1,000 pounds. It's a 4-cylinder, so it's not, you know, a huge gas-guzzling SUV. So the trailer had to weigh less than, ideally, I wanted it to weigh less than 600 pounds.
Right.
And the way Fred builds is with a welded frame construction instead of wood.
Yeah.
So instead of being close to 1,000 pounds, the dry weight on this trailer is 554 pounds. And so my little tiny car can tow it no problem. We've gone through, you know, Donner Pass and Lookout and 4th of July Pass and Grants Pass in Oregon, and the car tows her no problem. So we were there, I was there for a few days, and he finished the wiring between the car and the trailer, and then taught me how to drive her, how to tow her, and, you know, hitch and unhitch and all of those things. And then I took off and just started traveling with her over the summer. I've stayed in really interesting places. I started out only staying in RV parks because I just felt like that's the appropriate thing to do. But now it's like I stay at pilot travel centers. I've stayed at a winery and a restaurant. I stay at Walmart parking lots. I just stay everywhere, campgrounds.
I think this is so awesome. It's almost like playing house anywhere you choose, though.
It is. It's like the dollhouse I never had as a kid, but on wheels.
I can't believe it. So before we go on with the interview, I wanted to ask you more about the inside of it. I was hoping that we could go in, but
sure,
it's not going to work out because of the lighting. So would you tell us, like, what's in there?
Well, inside is a mattress. I have a 3-inch latex foam mattress that is 30 inches wide that both I and my 27-pound dog both fit on at night to sleep. There's a counter and some shelving where I keep my cookware and my food, and overhead shelving on the back end right over there, and then a lower shelf on the front end here.
We have those pictures? Oh yeah, here we go.
Empty. I didn't put an interior picture full because I thought the camera was going to go in, but I can send you one.
Okay.
You can add in later. So that shelf right there stores all of my clothes and toiletries and things like that. There's room, normally this little vintage grill sitting between us here on the floor. It fits in there.
Yeah.
I use it for cooking outside the trailer in the day, and at night I use it as a shoe rack so that I could put my dirty shoes on it when I go to bed at night. I do have a porta potty, which is often one of the first questions people ask is, how do you go to the bathroom in there?
It looks like a kid's training seat, right? Like a training toilet
It's
for a
really
child.
fancy. Since I'm not a camper, I had no idea that they now make these porta potties that have a freshwater tank and it flushes just like your toilet at home, and they're odor free. So I do have a porta potty. It was more of a safety measure because I thought, you know, if I'm in a campground or in a parking lot and it's midnight or 2 a.m., I might not feel safe to get out of the trailer to go use a public restroom, even if there is one. So yeah, so I got this, and I've only used it on a handful of occasions, but it's nice to know it's there if I need it for
Right.
safety's sake.
So we've seen your toilet, and this is your grand cooking station.
This is how I cook right here. I have a little tiny, it's an ultralight backpacking stove.
Okay.
So this part just unscrews from the base where the fuel is. And I can put my cast iron fry pan or like this little pot, so I can cook, heat anything, you know, food or beverages using just this teeny little stove.
I am just blown away. I just love your story. So tell me, did you prepare most of your meals, or did you eat out a lot?
Initially, I just ate out because
Okay.
I was just traveling on the interstates to get to destinations more than camping. But then just recently in September, I attended my first tiny trailer rally, which was in Mauston, Wisconsin, hosted by the Camp Inn. They're a teardrop trailer company that make the most beautiful high-end teardrops, I think, in the
Right.
country. And they generously open their rally every year to people who just have tiny trailers. You don't have to own a Camp Inn to attend.
Right.
And so Fred had found out about it, and I was already planning a trip back to Michigan a little while later. He said, if you come out a week early, we could go to this rally. So I went, and it was just hilarious because you pull into this, you know, park. It's a county park, not a state park. And there's just tiny trailers, you know, everywhere. And so I basically finally learned how to camp after just traveling with the trailer, and won an award for coming the furthest from
Oh my dear.
anywhere in the country to attend.
Are we blocking your award here?
It's the
Oh.
farthest west award. So that was quite fun and a big surprise.
Congratulations. That's really huge considering this is your first journey, right? First
Yeah,
voyage.
yeah. But at that rally, I started to learn how to camp, how to cook. Fred taught me because he's done this for years, and I learned he taught me how to light my Coleman lantern. That was my dad's.
Oh, that's one thing I should have
I have no
asked you.
idea how to
Sorry, didn't mean
use.
to cut you off. So how do you have lights in there at night? Just a lantern?
There's 6 overhead lights right now that are on inside of there. They run from a 12-volt battery that's in the tongue box. And then I also had 3 of these porch lights added to both the rear where the door is and on each side. Again, just for safety. Most people don't do that, but since I was traveling by myself, I thought it would be better to have more.
And you're young and beautiful.
So yeah, so the battery in there not only runs the lights, it
Yeah.
runs the vent fan up on top of the trailer so I can blow air in or out. And then there's a little charging station that has 3 DC outlets and 2 USB outlets so that I can charge my phone and my camera batteries and things like that at night.
You guys thought of every single detail so that you could be comfortable in this thing.
Right.
So you could live in this.
You could. At the Camp In Rally, they did give some awards because some people have lived out of their trailers for, one gentleman, 8.5 years, one for 4 years. I think there's one woman who's been living out of hers for 2.5 years. And so people do live out of them long term as well as just do short trips in them.
But in terms of temperature control in the summer, what's it like? And in the winter, well, you've never had a winter with it, obviously.
During the summer, it's actually fine because I'm not in the trailer during the day.
Okay.
One time I did park at a rest stop to take a nap because I had got a headache while I was driving. And it was sunny and I was parked in full sun, but I just turned the fan to blow the air out and took an hour-long, very comfortable nap. Those are all the different kind of places I've stayed at. I even stayed on Treasure Island just a few weeks ago for a tiny trailer rally there. There are 10 of us that got to spend the night out there on the island. But actually back in June, there was one night in Montana where the temperature went to 40 degrees. And I thought that was cold. But on this last trip back, I stayed in Iowa one night when it was 31 degrees and a 28-degree night in Oregon. So it gets really cold. And when you walk in the trailer, when you get in,
Yeah.
the air is so cold. but I have 2 blankets for those nights. And then within 3 hours, your body temperature heats the cabin up so much that I always wake up too hot.
So it sounds like it's pretty well insulated.
I did get these cute little fingerless mittens though, so that when it's 28 degrees, I can go in the trailer at night and still be texting on my phone and being on Facebook or, you know, reading a book. And it makes a huge difference to have them on. So you just kind of deal with it. If I'm at a campground that has electricity, I can plug in, I have a small ceramic heater that I can plug in and stay warm that way. But when you're parking in a parking lot somewhere, then you just have to kind of tough it out.
Well, it's fair to say that you've never really spent a winter in it because you picked it up this summer, and this is going to be your first winter.
Right. Although winter in California is warmer than fall in Oregon.
Oh, so you're not planning to leave California in it this winter?
No,
Okay.
I don't think, you know, just for safety's sake, I don't plan to drive with it in the snow. It would be fun to at some point, because on this last trip, I finally got to go sightseeing as well. After the rally, Fred took me along the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I got to see all these famous places like the Pictured Rocks and Miners Falls and the Two-Hearted River.
Look at those pictures.
All kinds of, you know, beautiful things I usually don't see because I'm too busy driving on the interstate.
I'm looking at a picture now of a waterfall. Where was that?
That was in Michigan. That's in Michigan, right along Lake Superior.
What waterfall is it?
That's the Miners Falls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Look, I mean,
So,
that is
and
so beautiful.
The upper left picture was Pictured Rocks, which was not
Okay.
far from Miners Falls. We actually snuck in to see those two things because while we were camping in a different national park, the government shutdown took place.
Oh, no.
And so they tried to shut these areas down by putting barricades up, but they left enough room for cars to still drive through. And so we went ahead and drove through. I mean, I'd driven all the way to Michigan to come see these things. And so we kind of snuck in on those. The upper right is Lake Superior, which I guess I'd seen one Great Lake in the past, but didn't realize it. And now after this trip, I've seen 4.
So after all of, I mean, your story is pretty incredible. And I have to say, definition of tenacity, determination, going after what you love. What would you say is the one thing you wish you would have done differently during this whole process?
You know, someone asked me that at the Camp-In rally, what would you do differently about even designing my trailer? And I said nothing. Like, the trailer is perfect.
Really?
And then I realized the only thing I would have changed was I should have started doing this a couple decades ago instead of waiting till this year.
That is remarkable.
Because I just love it so much.
That's, I mean, to have that much love for something, I think that's your definition of having peace and joy in your life, really.
It is.
And it's not going to take your emotions all over the place like humans do.
Right.
What a great investment, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you don't have anything you would change. What would you say is the one experience that stands out the most for you?
Well, when I drove back in June, just after, it was, I think, 3 days after leaving Fred's house in Michigan, there was an incident where I was driving down I-90 and approaching Gillette, Wyoming, and I saw the most ominous clouds on the horizon line I had ever seen in my life. And I called my mom. I have Bluetooth in my car, so I called my mom and asked her, you know, go on the computer and look at the real-time weather report for Gillette and tell me, what are these clouds I'm seeing? And she looked and she said, they're rain. It's like green and dark green. It's just rain. And I'm like, okay, well, I've already spent the night and driven through torrential rain the first night after I left Michigan.
Right.
And so I thought I can drive through rain. And as I drove into this cloud bank, I just thought, oh no, something's wrong. This is not normal. Because as I went under these clouds, it became dark, like almost like, you know, twilight kind of dark, but it was 2 p.m. And I just got this pit in my stomach, and then it started hailing. I was on the edge of a tornado watch storm. So it was a large hailstorm for a tornado storm. And within a matter of about 10 seconds, it was a whiteout hail and rainstorm, just torrential. And I tried to start moving over to get off the freeway and realized I can't even see what's on the edge of the shoulder. I couldn't even see where the shoulder was. It was so white. And then I thought, I don't know what's on the other side of the shoulder.
Were you scared?
If I was scared, I thought I should have looked earlier to see if it's an embankment or a cliff or if it's flat. I have no clue, and there's no way to tell now.
Oh my goodness.
So I pulled over just far enough where I could barely see the white line, and I knew I was on the right side of the white line on the side of the road. And about 2 minutes later, the hail stopped, and I could see it was a field, so I wouldn't have fallen over and killed myself. But now there was 3 inches of hail on the roadway, and I had pulled over at the top of an incline just before the peak of it.
Oh,
and so
dear.
I was stuck in 3 inches of ice, and I had to call the Gillette Police Department. Thank goodness there was reception. And they called the highway patrol, and they called AAA for me. And 20 minutes later, a wrecker came.
That's great, 20
and
minutes?
Pulled me out, pulled me up to the top of the hill. So that was probably the most harrowing part of traveling so far. But, you know, I survived. And after that, it was really funny because before that, I had been dreading driving the passes of Montana and Idaho to get to Washington.
Yes.
And after making it through that hailstorm, I was like, bring it on. I can drive
handle
passes. I can
anything.
do anything now. Yeah.
Well,
so.
and you mentioned to me in a conversation we had earlier about passing a bunch of cows.
Oh, yeah.
Where was that? And tell us that story.
So the other kind of odd thing is, having never driven across the country before, everything just feels surreal all the time. I feel like I'm driving through, you know, a travel book or through a TV show or something, because I see things that I've seen on television or in movies, and I'm like right there. And so sometimes it's really neat, but on the way back in October, there had been this freak blizzard in South Dakota where it was 3 days of 80-degree heat followed by this sudden snowstorm. And apparently, I believe it was like 70-mile-per-hour winds or something with freezing rain, and the cows hadn't grown their winter coats yet. And then the rain was followed by 4 to 5 feet of snow. And so tens of thousands of cows froze to death out in the summer pastures because there was no shelter.
Sad.
It's never happened before like that. And so that had happened a couple weeks earlier. Well, when I was driving home, it was so sad because I just kept seeing all these cow carcasses laying in the fields right off Interstate 90, almost the entire day driving through South Dakota. And it was kind of funny because one of my friends, Armando, called just to check in and see how my trip was going. And that day, I just burst out in tears when he called me, and I'm like, it's awful, it's so sad, it's like all these dead cows everywhere, and you know, so he kind of talked me down until I felt better. But that was, you know, again, another thing that you see the pictures on the news, you don't ever expect to see it yourself in real life, but I did.
What an amazing experience that was, whole, I mean, all of it. And so, when I was listening to you tell the stories about watching these things on television and then, or reading about them in a book and actually driving through them.
Right.
Did you ever have any expectations of what you were going to encounter as you went along? Because you'd read something or seen something about a city you would go through?
No, I really didn't. I was most concerned when I left with just knowing my way. So I do have a GPS and I had a map, you know. And I was more concerned with safety, really. I had AAA and I had a cell phone. I have an AT&T phone, which I discovered on Interstate 80 gets almost no reception. So on my second trip, I also bought a pay-as-you-go Verizon phone because Verizon gets, you know, better coverage. I had done a bunch of research on how to downshift so that I could drive the passes safely, both going up and coming down, so I didn't have to use my brakes a whole lot. So I was so focused more on just being a safe driver and a safe traveler that I really didn't think too much about what am I going to see. And now that I've driven, actually, I added it up, and I've driven 13,331 miles with the trailer so far since June.
Oh my God.
Now I'm slowing down and becoming more of a tourist with it.
You know, I think it says a lot about our country and how safe our roads are. Because as a woman, to drive cross country with something like this, and you mentioned staying in parks, and you never had any scary experiences.
No.
You slept through the night, you always felt safe.
Oddly, the safest place I feel is at the truck stops. because they're very well lit. There's a lot of people. I stay at usually the pilot travel centers, not little, no-name truck stops. So they feel very, very safe. And I do take other precautions, like I try to finish driving each day by the time it gets dark, so I'm not driving during the night. And if I'm staying in an area that I'm really unfamiliar with and it's not right on the interstate, then I'll even do a search of the local crime map and make sure the destination I've chosen is in a safe neighborhood. So I take precautions.
Yeah, it sounds like you took all necessary precautions. But when you stop at the truck stop, say for example, you're driving somewhere and you think, oh, it's getting dark, I better park for the night.
Right.
You pull in a truck stop. What do you do there? Say you get there at like 8 o'clock and you sleep till in the morning?
So what I do, is I actually research. So every night I know where my destination will be that night. I don't just drive till I see something. I always have an actual destination when I leave in the morning. And then when I get there, because it is a truck stop, I get out of my car, I park, I get out of my car, I get in the trailer, I lock the door, and I stay in the trailer.
Okay.
I don't get out and wander around or...
So we're running out of time, and I didn't mean to cut you off. We're running out of time, but so you always had something inside the trailer to do, because you don't have a television set in there, do you? Or you
There's
read
no
books?
TV. I do have books.
Okay.
This is a collection of books that it's funny, once you get a trailer, everyone starts giving you travel books and adventure books.
Okay.
So I read, and I do have my little phone with me, and I do origami artwork. So I've started bringing paper with me so I can do that while I'm in the trailer as well.
Okay, so we're out of time. It always goes by too quickly when I'm having fun. I just want you to tell me quickly before we wrap up, what would you say to some young woman who has a desire to do something like this? What advice do you have for her or a young man or anybody?
I think anyone, if they've never traveled across the country before, should, with or without a trailer. Just do a road trip and really see America. I was shocked, and like I said, I just wish I had done it sooner. But be smart, do your research and stay safe. Don't take unnecessary chances.
Thank you so much, Stacie. This is so great. I feel so privileged to share your adventure, your tenacity, your determination, and your fun with my viewers. I hope we can continue on in the life of the Glampette.
Sure.
And your blogging, and so we'll be staying in touch with you. Thank you so much for watching the Jennylyn Show, and thank you to my crew, without whom I can never produce one of these shows. So thank you, Stacie.
Thank you.
Thank you, crew, and see you next time. Thank you.